everybody. We are going to get started. I'm going to bring our presenter to the stage. Perfect. Hello. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. All right, so everybody please meet Elisa Choy. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. CEO and founder of Maven Data. I've been starting off sessions with a little bit of a question of what are you reading or listening to these days that you would recommend for our audience?
Oh, well, I was just listening to my favorite trance track called Safety by Gareth Emery, which is what I'm going to be using for my company music video. So that's literally what I was listening to before jumping on this. I don't think it's much help to people, but if you like trance, it's a great track.
That's awesome. I love that answer. Cool. Well, I am going to pull up your slides here, and I'm just going to let you get right into it. Thanks.
Thank you. What a pleasure it is to share the predictions that we see using AI. And we're talking about Global Wellness 2020. Now, before I start, I'm going to start with a little bit of a story and to give you a little bit of colour as to what I do and how I predict things in other markets. And then we'll share the insights that have been gathered from this world-first research. So imagine this. 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. That's a lot of data, and we are amassing so much data faster and faster every second of the day. Now, it's created by our actions, our behaviours, events. Humans create it, machines log it. But what does that actually mean? Well, what we can see here is that's 2.5 quintillion bytes of data per day. And a quintillion is 10 to the power of 18, or 1 with 18 zeros followed by it. That's a lot of data. So what you're seeing here is a cube. 1 quintillion pennies stacked up against the Empire State Building, which is that little white dot in the corner. The Empire State Building is one of the tallest buildings in the world, and it's 443 meters high. So imagine every single day, 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is being created. And where does this all sit? It's largely on the internet. And this is the market data that I refer to when we are applying our market research. And we have the ability to use sophisticated, advanced analytics like AI, where we can mine and process this information really, really fast. And the insights that we get out of that are predictive. So I'm delighted to share with you some of the predictions that I've made in the past. And then we'll go into global wellness. So remember, you are the dot, that yellow dot. We are amongst a sea of bubbles. There's a universe of bubbles around us, social media, websites, blogs, you name it. Most of the data I talk about sits outside of you. So when we are looking at understanding the market of customers, of people, we are mining this information outside of you. And the trick is in understanding the future or predicting the future, it's really in understanding people. What do people really care about? What do people engage with? And what do people what's really important to them and what's relevant? Because if you're not relevant, then there's no point. Your business does not exist. Now, we're talking about a new way of doing strategic market research. A new era of data-driven predictive market research is here. And when I talk about quintillion bytes of data, with AI today, we have the ability to process petabytes of data. So a petabyte is 1 to the power of 15. That's still a heck of a lot of data. So remember how we used to do traditional market research? It was costly. You used a small sample size and you essentially were asking people for their opinions, which is biased. Because we all know that when you ask somebody what they think they'll do in the future, it's very likely that they won't actually do that in the future. And so the essence of traditional market research is that it is biased. And it's also very costly and timely to conduct. And at the end of the day, it's qualitative and it's not predictive. It's just opinions. Now, enter the world of predictive market research using AI. Not only now are you expanding your sample to the entire world that engages with content online, you are also able to replicate your study. You're able to remove the bias because we are analysing how people engage with content online in their natural environment, meaning they don't know they're being observed. Now, that's unbiased. And we're also measuring emotion, because emotions drive behaviour and strong emotions change behaviour, which is what I'll show you very shortly. So with AI for strategic market research, it becomes predictive, and that is when it's really, really exciting. So I'm going to take you through two very important diagnostics that I use when we're looking at predicting the future. What you're looking at here is engagement, and we're looking at classifying engagement into 4 key quadrants. I want you to focus on the bottom 2 for now. The bottom 2 is what I call transient and tribal. Now, this is most of the content that's online is not engaging, not important. It's what I call noise. In fact, 93% of what is online is just noise. That means it's not relevant to us. Now, the danger is that if you are communicating about those narratives in that space, you're not going to be heard. Now, flip it to the top 2 quadrants and we'll have timeless and transformational. Now, these are the narratives which are essentially searches. A narrative is a word. It could be a brand. It could be a topic or an issue. Now, when we're understanding content online, we're looking at content relating to these words using natural language processing. So if you're looking at something that is deeply engaging, relevant to culture, that's what we call timeless. And 5% of narratives generally sit in that quadrant. And occasionally, this is the exciting part, occasionally we will find what we call transformational narratives. And those are the ones that actually are relevant, are timeless in nature, but have an element of momentum. They're dynamic, they're moving. So these are the things that I call the gold nuggets. And if you latch onto those themes, then you have an opportunity to ride the future. So when we're looking at this research, it's based on a platform developed by very smart people, way smarter than me, called Significant Systems. And they've developed a platform for over 8-9 years now. And so when we were testing the efficacy of being able to understand and reading engagement, when they tested it against the world's most valuable brands, right, which is the Best Global Brand Index in 2018, 90% of the most valuable brands in the world sit in the timeless quadrant. And the most valuable brands by nature have high brand equity, very relevant, highly engaging, and they're the likes of your Nikes, your McDonald's, all those big brands that are deeply relevant to humans and culture today. So engagement is one element I'm going to introduce. The second element, which is equally important, is emotion. Now, what you're looking at here are 2 emotion wheels. Now, an emotion wheel gives you lots of color around how people feel. And there are many ways to look at the emotion wheel. The color of the emotion, green is positive, red is negative. And the strength of the emotion is the intensity of the color. The width of the arc is the proportion of that particular emotion to the overall emotion. And you've also got depth of emotion, starting with broad emotions in the center ring, like love, joy, fear, and going into more finer emotions. Now, we're looking at over 400 different emotions here, and we're measuring it through understanding the context and the tone of content online. So this is an example of 2 emotion wheels that we looked at based on the US election in 2016. So you can see on the left, one candidate had deep joy, deep love, was very much liked relative to the other one. Would you like to see who they were? So back in 2016, prior to the polling day, we took a look at the emotions behind Trump and Clinton. And you can see here that despite all popular opinion and all the polls said that Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide, we saw that the market actually felt very differently. It was actually quite contrarian to the opinions of all the experts. Now, this is really exciting, and I know what your next question is. And the answer is yes, of course. I am looking at the US election 2020, but we're not going to talk about that today. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, then I'll be dropping some content in the lead up to the election. So this was a really interesting one, looking at emotion, because as I said, if we can measure emotion, it's an indicator of engagement, and people are driven by emotion. Emotion drives decisions. Strong emotions change behaviour. So if we can pick up strong emotions, then we can start predicting the future. I'll give you another example. So it was a quiet evening back in July 2019, and my children had gone to bed, and I was looking at whether I could predict the winner of the Voice competition. Now, The Voice is a franchise all over the world. I'm sure you all have heard of The Voice. It's a singing competition. And essentially what I wanted to test was if I can read the emotion and engagement around the finalists, the contestants, can I pick up whether or not I could predict the winner? So I took a look at this on the eve of the finale in Australia in July 2019, and there were 4 finalists. There were 3 boys and 1 girl. I looked at social media because I wanted to understand what social media metrics said. So this is what it said. According to social media, Facebook likes, it was very clear that Daniel Shaw was going to be the winner based on the highest number of likes. So I tested this against my method using AI, using the market, and what I came up with was this. Now, if we're looking at the engagement quadrants, you could see that out of the 4 contestants, we had Diana Ruvis, she was transformational. Now, that blew my mind because to me, it's a competition which said that if I really love somebody, I was highly engaged with a particular contestant, I'm going to change my behaviour, which is to vote. Now, according to Facebook, Diana would have come 3rd. So that got me excited. So this year, in 2020, I did it again and I got it right. And then I looked at MasterChef Australia, which I'm sure you've all heard of MasterChef. It's a cooking competition over 10 to 12 weeks. And I got it right. And then I had a go at predicting Big Brother. And Big Brother is another competition. It's a popularity contest, essentially good-looking people, young people stuck in a house, and they do activities and people watch them, ultimate voyeurism. So I ran the prediction and unfortunately I got it wrong. This one I missed and it irked me. And the reason why I missed it was because I ran the analysis a little bit too early. So what it said to me was that in a competition like The Voice and MasterChef, you had many, many weeks to build engagement and a deep love for the contestant that you wanted to win. And so by the time it came to finale, you didn't really change your mind. Whereas with Big Brother, it was a different competition. The contestants and the nature of the competition were that you didn't have anything meaningful to engage with. There were no stories behind it. They had no skill. It was literally a popularity contest, right? So on the eve of the winner being announced, there was a lot of chatter about things and lots of things moved the needle in terms of sentiment in the market within 24 hours. I read it a little bit too early and hence I got it wrong. So in this case, it wasn't data that was wrong or AI that was wrong. It was Elisa Choy that got it wrong. But my point is that this gave me an eye-opener into the power of using market data that surrounds all of us on the internet and using the power of AI today to be able to predict the future. So turning my mind now to something industry standard, right? Forget the competitions, that proved the point. But the industry, what happens in using this element of market research for industry? So 2 years ago, back in January 2018, there was a study that we did on climate change. Now, if you remember 2 years ago, it was all about a debate. There were lots and lots of topics. And imagine the thousands and hundreds of topics that could be tested to understand climate change. Now, we were tasked to understand what was the most important, what were the strongest stories within climate change, because the angle was that we needed to talk about the things that people deeply cared about, were concerned about, were moving to them. What were the emotions sitting behind it? Because obviously it was more than just a campaign. It was something that required a lot of attention to really understand what people deeply cared about. So we undertook this study back in January 2018 and we tested 100 narratives around climate change. Now, what you can see is that, what I'll show you very shortly, is that within a week we were able to test petabytes of information online using AI, and we used an English worldview. Now, the beauty of AI in this way is that we can do it in any natural language. So you can test markets in any natural language for their view of their world. So the results were this. This is what it looked like. 100 narratives tested, and you can see a large number of them were sitting in the noise section, which is transient. A large number of them were sitting in the timeless section, but there are two that popped out that were transformational. Now, these two were related to some grassroots campaign that were targeted towards school children. So 2 years ago, there was a campaign to target school children to bring awareness around climate change. It was very obvious that this campaign resonated with school children and young people. Now, if you roll forward the clock 15 months, what did we have occur? Well, in Australia, what we see on the left is that in March 2019, we saw 40,000 young Australians skip school and protest for climate change. Roll forward 6 more months and we had the rise of Greta Thunberg as she led the global climate change strike, and we had 300,000 Australians protest against climate change. Our prediction turned into reality. Isn't that just so exciting? So now let's turn to the world of wellness, global wellness. We know that the world is in flux, in a huge disruption, and wellness is being redefined. However, I actually think that the elements of wellness is essentially that we are chasing a feeling that makes us feel good, whichever definition of wellness that is. And for some people, you may think that wellness, in terms of elements of wellness, can't be engaged with, like travel, which I do agree. But I was looking at the data in Australia behind this, and I was looking at research by the Global Wellness Institute, which we partnered on this study. And so the Global Wellness Institute is a body, a highly credible body, and every year they have a Global Wellness Summit. And they interview and survey all the experts in the field and, asking them what they thought about the trends that were coming in the world of wellness. Now, we know from their statistics that they forecast that it's a $4.5 trillion industry. It's a huge industry globally, and it traverses so many different sectors of our economy, and it's going to be growing at 6.4%, which is nearly twice as fast as global economic growth. Now, this is prior to COVID, I get that, but still, relative to other industries, it's a huge opportunity. It's a mega trend to tap into. So I was looking at post-COVID, obviously things have changed, but my theory around wellness is that people are not going to stop spending money to chase feeling good. And what we found in Australia was on the left, I saw that there was actually a 50% growth in what we call injectables, lip fillers in Australia, with a major beauty chain here. And that was very surprising. And a lot of this was to come from new customers. So new people decided, you know what, I'm actually going to treat myself to some lip fillers. Who would have thought that growth would have come post-COVID, but it did. So it shows that people are still finding ways to achieve their definition of wellness. Now, on the right, what we see here is that, yes, we've been locked down. We can't travel internationally. We can't even travel interstate, but we still can travel within our state. And in Australia, this is data that came out of the Ministry of Trade and Tourism, and it showed that in Sydney, New South Wales, there was a 5.4 million increase in domestic visitors in the month of June, which represented 70% increase from the month of May. And the majority came from intrastate. Now, if you put this in perspective, the whole population of New South Wales, which is the state of Sydney, is only 8.3 million, and 5.3 million of that are people who live in Sydney. So it's almost everybody in Sydney travelled. So just because COVID's happened doesn't mean that people are not chasing wellness. Right. So getting onto this research, we did a lot of background research, taking the trends that were forecasted by the Global Wellness Institute, 150 narratives, and then we were boiling it down into a research paper. And part of this analysis involved a lot of data, as you know, petabytes of it. And the key question we wanted to ask was, in the world of wellness, what were the themes that were the most important? What is going to change the world? What are the opportunities that industry have today to ride this mega theme? And our industry research came across 6 key segments. Essentially, I'm only going to cover 3 of them today. I'm going to cover food and nutrition, beauty, health, and I'm not going to cover travel, and I'm not going to cover physical environment. Now, the immense amount of research and analysis that went behind this, it's absolutely impossible to be able to distill in the next 10 minutes, all of that, the depth of that research. So what I'm going to try and do is distill what I find the most important and valuable to you. And obviously you have the opportunity to connect with me after the session if you wanted to find out more. So 150 narratives on one screen across 4 quadrants looks like this. It's quite a mess. It looks like somebody with COVID sneezed on the computer screen. So what I'm going to do is just going to pick out some of the elements and I'll talk to you as to what I think is happening. Food and nutrition. The narratives that we tested were a selection. So you could see here that they're around food quality, vegan, superfoods, plant-based foods, keto, Beyond Meat, which is a brand that uses plant-based meats or alternative meats, cooking, nutrition, paleo, sugar-free cereal. These are the narratives or a selection I'm showing you that we tested. And this is what it looked like. You can see here, if I just pay attention quickly to what was not important, which is the transient stuff, we're no longer interested in describing food as sugar-free or zero sugar. That is a theme that has passed. And I see advertisements and new products today that still show sugar-free. It's not going to resonate, so they're missing the mark. What we're also looking at here is not interesting is cereal. Obviously, the idea around food and nutrition is not about having a healthy breakfast starting with cereal. When you start looking at the narratives that are deeply important, the stuff around nutrition and wellness, superfoods, plant-based meats, vegan, paleo and keto, we are becoming more and more educated into how the science of food works. We are more interested and engaged with the nutrition behind it, not just the labels of food or of fat-free or sugar-free. And what I found really interesting, which I'll go in a little bit more now, is gut health and wellness and food quality and nutrition. So these two were transformational. Now, what does that really mean? It means that these have dynamic momentum. They are highly relevant to culture and to people. People want to know more about it. People feel very emotive about it. And these are the opportunities to tap into. If I was to show you these emotion wheels, you can see for vegan food and wellness, there's a deep love. The majority of the feeling around this is highly, highly positive. And we're seeing a lot of astonishment or expectation. And when I see that purple there, it means that people are looking for more. So there's no surprise that I see vegan products doing very, very well. Now, keto, on the other hand, also highly, highly emotive and highly positive. Paleo, it is relevant but not as strong, and zero sugar and wellness. You can see here that it's not resonating. The paleness of the emotion wheel shows that it's not as relevant as it used to be. So it's something that you don't really pay attention to. And I'm going to have to fly through this because I realize that time is crunching and I really want to get through and show as much as I can. Right, so this is a nugget that I want to show you is in relation to the prediction of connecting wellness with pets. What came up through this research was not only wellness for food and nutrition for humans, but actually a concern and a deep engagement in understanding how to keep our pets' food and nutrition on par with humans. In fact, some people feed their dogs and pets better than they feed themselves. Now, this is a prediction that I see will take form in a lot of pet brands that will grasp onto the global wellness mega theme through food and nutrition. So watch this space. Health. Now, there's been a lot of questions around health that have been asked in the last couple of days. What we know that we're all living longer, which is a good thing. And there's no country in the world that has less than an average lifespan of 50 years. So no country in the world has less than 50 years in average lifespan. That is huge. So we're living longer and we're very concerned or we're very interested in how to prolong longevity. But what does that really mean? Well, there's a lot of narratives that we tested here. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to show you essentially there's a lot of narratives that we picked up that were timeless, that were highly relevant. I'm calling out things like Ayurveda, health span, JOMO, joy of missing out, self-care and wellness, sleep apnea makes it there, metformin, microbiome. And what I also found interesting was energy exhaustion and me time are transformational. There's definitely consciousness to really understand energy, me time, unplugging. And it's something I saw in the travel theme as well. People are really seeking the nature connection, the unplugging, digital detox. I really want to understand a more holistic view to health and wellness. Now, if we look at here, the two narratives I call out are better sleep. Now, you see here that there's a deep anxiety, a deep concern around having better sleep. Now, this shows an opportunity. If you can tap into this market to help people solve sleep, then you're on a winner. And you've also got energy exhaustion. Look at the feeling behind energy exhaustion. It's predominantly negative, as you would expect. And so, again, when I see these emotion wheels, and I've seen thousands of these, it tells a story as to market feeling a pain, feeling a need. And if you can find a way to connect to this narrative, then you're going to remain relevant. Have a look at healthy aging on the left here. Now, when we're considering aging, we're not looking at aging from a perspective of we're getting ready to die. We're looking at healthy aging to prolong our lifespan. How can we age gracefully? And it's not about wrinkles or anti-wrinkle creams anymore. It's about how do we use our food and nutrition, how do we use the wellness concepts to actually live a longer, fruitful life into our age. And meditation is really interesting. Have a look at that. There's absolute deep joy and deep happiness and overwhelming positive emotions around meditation. So imagine if you were to, think of creative ways to tap into this narrative because it's highly relevant. So lastly, quickly, beauty. We're understanding here that beauty is more than skin deep. So gone are the days of topical creams and anti-wrinkle creams and things like that. We actually now have an interest in understanding gut health in relation to beauty. We're looking at glowing skin. We don't want to cover up. We actually want to glow from inside. We want to understand the nutritional benefits that actually formulate to producing beautiful skin. Look at what's not interesting. We're not interested in the science of aging. We're not interested in anti-aging products. We're actually embracing aging. And so if you look at products that are talking to that theme, they're not going to be relevant. People don't really care about that stuff anymore. We've moved on. So quickly looking at these two, you should be an expert now looking at these charts. With cellular beauty, it's actually talking about the science of cellular beauty from a cellular level. People now have an appetite to understand the scientific elements of what makes cells healthy, that produces healthy skin or health and beauty in general. And so on that note, I'm going to leave it here because I'm conscious of time. I want to give you some time for Q&A. So I just want to leave you with a message that the world is your sample, and using the ability of AI and market data around you, we are able to uncover what people deeply care about. And if you tap into those narratives, then you will remain relevant in your business no matter what industry you are in. And if you're interested in a deeper dive in the full study, we have the Global Wellness 2020 report that will be released in November next month. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm very open to any questions that you have.
Cool. All right. Our first question is, do you have any stats on average spend on what people are interested in?
No. So the type of research we do is strategic market research. So the stats on spending will require data from, I call it internal data that companies would own, which we don't have access to. So no is the short answer.
Got it. I'm sure this is everyone's favorite question, but do you have any predictions for the US presidential election?
Yes, I do. I've been looking at this for the last couple of weeks, and it's quite volatile. It's moved a lot. So what I'm going to be doing is dropping some content in relation to this on LinkedIn in the coming week. So stay tuned for that. It's actually a very interesting story, and without letting the cat out of the bag, I don't think it's what people think it is.
Very cool. I think you probably just got like 50 different friend requests on LinkedIn. How do you calibrate and validate your data/AI processing?
From what perspective? Well,
I'm not sure because it wasn't my question, but
because there's in the past I've been asked the question, how do you calibrate the data based on whether the data is factual or truth or not truth, if that's one angle. And the truth about that is what we measure is what people engage with. Whether or not it's true or fact or alternative fact, we don't do that. And nobody can do that. If you watch the social network documentary, no one, not even Facebook, can actually understand and discern what's true and what's not true. What we can read is what people are engaging with. Now, if you find that people are engaging with the narrative based on a story that is not fact, then you have insight into understanding that you need to turn that story around. So no, I don't have the ability to calibrate from that perspective.
Got it. Last question is, do you have any insight into how some of these things may have changed with COVID taken into consideration?
Yeah, for sure. This study was done in January this year, and so obviously it was pre-COVID, and a lot of the narratives would have moved along, particularly around travel. So, and which is why I didn't choose to show any of them today. I haven't done a refresh, which is why the report will be re-released in November to have a look at some of these narratives and see how they've moved. But essentially with wellness, it's the theme around chasing the feeling of making yourself feel good, whichever definition it is. And those things are back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, those things don't change. You need to look after yourself. You need to bring joy and love into your life. You need to avoid things that you're scared of. You need to fix your pains. Those don't change. So, but I would be interested to see some of the movements. They would have shifted, and I will release that in the November 2020 report.
Mm-hmm. We're going to keep going a little bit over time here. The last question that came in are, why are traditional media not talking about these points/trends, but only spreading fear and talking about the virus and the vaccine?
I wish I had the answer to that question as well. I think, well, first of all, this type of research is, we are Australia's first AI-powered strategic market research agency. It hasn't been done before this way. And so it's an element of people don't know that this way of doing research exists. And the other element is, of course, I don't know what the agendas are, all these different media outlets, etc. Everyone's got an agenda. So you have the power. Unfortunately, they have a lot of power in what they want to say, and we pick up on whether people engage with what they say or not. I'm hoping that with the ability to spread this type of research and way of thinking wider, that we can actually start changing the conversation and making things more relevant and getting rid of some of the noise in the content. Because the last thing we want more is more noise and more content that just doesn't resonate.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right. Well, we're going to give everybody a chance to jump to the next sessions that are happening. Thank you so much. I feel like I learned a lot in this session. And my favorite part was the JOMO, joy of missing out. And I'm going to start using that in my daily language. I haven't heard that one before. So thank you so much, Elisa. We really appreciate it. Everybody else, we'll see you in the rest of the sessions.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.